necessarily want everyone to be in the recording. So there we go. All right. So welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know that more people will join us as we move along, but I just wanted to be mindful of everybody's time and make sure that Christine has enough time to talk about everything and to answer any questions you might have. So my name is Nick Amy. I'm the Director of Outreach and Development for NAMI Bucks County, PA. And if you don't know what NAMI is, we are the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to improving the lives of individuals and families affected by mental health conditions through recovery-focused education, advocacy, and support. They pay me to remember that, right? So, and part of what we do, obviously, is education and awareness. And tonight we are fortunate to have Christine DiPilla with us. And she is going to talk about what happens when the body stores trauma and what comes of that and what we can do to help ourselves with it. So to tell you a little bit about Christine, she is a licensed massage therapist, certified yoga instructor, earth-based healing arts practitioner, attempt survivor, survivor of sibling suicide, and a mental health advocate. I can vouch for that. Thank you for all you do, Christine, who guides people into a deeper relationship with their internal experiences, learning to listen to the whispers of their body messages. Using breath, body, sound, movement, writing, and nature, she weaves together individual healing sessions and facilitates group programs and practices to support folks in their healing process. So with that, I am going to highlight you, Christine, so everyone can see you, and hand it over to you. And thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Nick, for inviting me to be here. And thank you, everybody, for taking some time out of your evening to be here. It's good to see you all, or those of you I can see. As Nick mentioned, I'm a licensed massage therapist and a yoga instructor. And what I mean by healing arts practitioner or earth-based healing arts practitioner is that I attune to the cycles of nature. I have found that in my own healing, it is much better for me to sort of use nature to regulate my nervous system. And I'll explain a little bit what that means as we go on. But first, I'd like to talk about our nervous system in general, right? We listen to our bodies, and our bodies are these walking physical manifestations of everything we've been through in our entire lives. And they're always communicating with us. One of the first things I learned in massage school is that the body never lies. Our mind will play tricks on us. We may try to fit to ourselves, but the body is always giving us signals and always telling us what we need. We live in a culture where we push through things and we disconnect from our body sensations in general. So connecting in with ourselves is difficult to do even in our culture in the best of situations, let alone when we're experiencing overwhelm to our nervous system. And that can be in many different ways, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So what I have found in my own practice through yoga, through gentle movement in that, not pushing, but really listening and responding to and working with my body sensations with compassion and curiosity and non-judgment, which isn't always easy to do. Those things take a lot of practice, daily practice. But once you begin this practice, you can learn to work with your nervous system and begin to shift it like you would a car. So how does our body talk to us? It talks to us through our nervous system and through the autonomic awareness. So we have the nervous system is our primary driver and the foundation of our thoughts, of our feelings, of our behaviors, and our relationship dynamics. It's the hub of our health and our wellness. It connects us to our hearts, our minds, our bodies, our spirit. Our nervous system incorporates all of these things on all levels. On a physical level, when our nervous system is healthy, it looks like systemic homeostasis. Everything's moving as it should. Systemic, like our respiration, our circulatory system, our gastrointestinal system, everything is moving nicely. On a mental level, when our nervous system is functioning optimally, it looks like we have access to our full thinking capacity, right? So we're focused, we're creative, we could be strategic. On a heart level, for our nervous system, what that would look like when it's in a healthy state is we have compassion for ourselves and for others. And we have empathy for others. And on a spiritual level, what that would look like is our capacity to connect with something larger than ourselves. And this is where my nature practice comes in. But chronic and toxic stress or trauma affects all of those layers too. So when our nervous system is taking a hit, depending on the severity, depending on the duration and the length, and our capacity to bounce back, what our baseline is, these on a physical level, it can create physical pain, syndromes, sleep issues, illnesses, imbalance in your body systems. In your circulatory system, it might look like some heart issues. In your digestive system, it might look like gastrointestinal disorders, and so on. At the mind level, our prefrontal cortex isn't fully engaged when our body's in a physiological state of stress or trauma. This is the part of our brain that makes decisions, so our executive functioning is impacted. Our ability to collect our thoughts and organize our feelings and thoughts is impacted. And when our nervous system is in survival physiology, it can impact our relationships and our connection to something bigger than ourselves. It affects expression of self on all levels. Excuse me. I'm going to take a moment and just check in with my nervous system for a minute, clear my throat, and take a few deep breaths. So the autonomic nervous system, these body processes are happening all day long, every day. As we're speaking, as you're sitting here looking at me, your body is working to get your heart rate going, to pump blood through your body, to take in stimulus, to regulate all of the chemicals that go on, all of the things that happen in our body when we're taking in information. So we don't think about these things, right? We don't say to ourselves, okay, I have to breathe now. I mean, well, sometimes we do, right? If our breath is stuck, if we're in that state, but it's not something that we are constantly with every breath managing. It just happens in the background. And that's what our autonomic nervous system does. It's the engine that drives all of the parts of ourselves, the mind, the body, the heart, and the spirit. So within that piece, the autonomic nervous system, which is our engine, there are three primary circuits. So our sympathetic nervous system is like our gas pedal, right? It gives us the drive, the impetus, the get up and go. It's our ability to move through life. It's the part that's activated during a stress response. So we're on the gas, right? In our whole autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic is the gas. Go, 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 go. The parasympathetic nervous system, part of the autonomic nervous system, so we have two, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. The parasympathetic, I often refer to as like our parachute. But if we're using a car analogy, we can refer to it as our brake pedal. So our sympathetic nervous system is driving us along, driving us along, driving us along, and then we see something that maybe causes us to pump our brakes a little bit, right? That's part of what the parasympathetic nervous system does. It regulates our speed as we're moving through life. It manages our response to stimulus. It manages and it regulates our fight or flight, those stress responses. Part of the parasympathetic nervous system, so we have our brake pedal, but we also have an emergency brake. And that is our freeze. So when the brake pedal doesn't work, when we're moving along, our sympathetic nervous system is making us go, 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 go. Something comes up, we need to pump our brakes a little bit, right? And that's what our nervous system is designed to do. But if the foot comes off the brake completely and the gas is just revving, we need to pull our e-brake. And that's our body's freeze response. It's the last ditch effort to manage our overwhelm by shutting things down. So I'm not a PowerPointy kind of person, so I did not create a PowerPoint. I have a very rudimentary thing visual to share. It is actually, and if there is anybody in the audience who has kids, you may recognize this. So I use this as sort of like a gauge for behavior for my children, right? But it's also really great gauge for ourselves, for our nervous system. It's just a simple little thing. I put clothespins on it when they're, if they're in the green, they're good. They start to get up here. They have an opportunity to come down. And that's what our nervous system is like. So we can create some language around using this very simple symbol that everybody can identify and recognize. We can create some language around what's happening. So at room temperature here, we're safe. As our temperature rises, a stimulus comes in that we're not quite sure about, and our gauge is rising and rising. It impacts our openness and our sense of connection to others. We no longer feel fully safe at a cellular level. Maybe we have language around it. Maybe we don't. Maybe we're identifying it. Maybe we're not. As it begins rising. So in here, there's a range, right? The fight or the flight. So with fight, we have it could be from irritation to anger to rage, right? Within here. And for flight, it could be concern, anxiety, and actually panic. When we get to this point here, this is a threshold here. We can go up and down in here, but there comes a point where the overwhelm is too much. We've hit rage, we've hit panic, the stimulus keeps coming, and our body shuts down. This is the freeze. So this is where, when we reach this point, our body has not been able to find a pathway to either leave or confront. There's too much stimulus, and it's our last ditch effort to shut things off. And our body moves into conservation. It can be an acute high activation freeze, or it could be something that is really chronic, long, drawn out over time and look more like body collapse. So rounded shoulders, kind of hunched posture from years and years of chronic, just in this high activation state. So a healthy nervous system, back to my very high-tech visual here, a healthy nervous system can fluctuate very easily between these two, right? Everybody has a baseline, and we can go from here, we get activated, we're driving our car, and a ball bounces out in front of our car, right? So we have stimulus, oh my goodness, our nervous system does what it needs to do. We actually hit the brakes. Our parasympathetic nervous system, which pumps our brakes, actually causes us to pump our brakes, and we come back down. The danger's gone, it's been resolved, and we can come back to our baseline. And throughout the day, every single one of us functioning in these levels. We're coming up, we're coming down. Sometimes in the case of, like I said, the car, it might come up here, but we can come back down and find our sense of safety again. And that's the way our nervous system is designed, to fluctuate through all these levels and come back. However, with chronic everyday stress that is ongoing, out of control, situations of prolonged toxic stress or acute overwhelming experiences that flood our physiology and result in us moving into survival physiology for too long. These repeated exposures over time, or acute exposures that get unresolved, end up accumulating in our muscle, in our tissue, in our fascia, and the fascia is interconnected with our nervous system, right? We know about like this, the fascia, this is a connective tissue that runs all throughout our body. I call it like our internal sweater, sort of. It covers out all of our muscles, it covers all of our organs, it runs along the inside of our body cavities and around every organ, every muscle, and one little pull of your fascia, I call it like it's the sweater. So if you get tight here, say in your chest, you're from collapse, it could cause your fascia in other places to cause pain, have pain. So one affects the other, just like throughout our whole body, right? And throughout all of our tissues, this unresolved trauma kind of gets stuck there. What this does, not only does it affect our actual like posture, but it also affects our baseline. So maybe you've had so much repeated exposure to stress that your baseline is you're no longer always operating at a safe and connected state. Maybe your baseline is here. Maybe your baseline is here. And you may not even be aware of where your baseline is because it's been going on for so long, and you just have, for example, you may be here and have coping mechanisms and not even aware that this is where you're operating at a hypervigilant state most of the time. When our body is increased like this, because it can't remember how to come back into the safety, being at this increased level keeps us there. Our body forgets how to dip back down, and we're just constantly looking for danger. Our amygdala, what Bessel Van der Kolk refers to as the smoke alarm in our body, is constantly scanning, looking for danger. We're always in a hypervigilant state. This can cause a lot of, as we had talked about before, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and the heart issues. So, but the good news is, we know that we can, through practice, through certain somatic practices, through yoga, through breath work, through mindfulness, and of course, trauma therapy, we can learn to come back. We can learn to reach a sense of safety in our bodies. So the system, the stress is anything that requires our system to make adaptations and changes, right? So we experience this all the time, and we're up and down. But what happens is trauma. So trauma is anything that overwhelms our body's ability to not just make those adaptations, but to recover from them. And anything that is too much, too soon, and overwhelms the body system, takes it to a state where it either has to shut down or constantly fluctuate between these two levels, is what we would refer to as trauma. So some people who believe that trauma has to be some big impactful thing that happens to us, and that is not always the case. It can be minor, well, not minor, but it could be micro things over time that activate, that bring us slowly and gradually up to a level. It doesn't have to be one hard, fast thing. When we are in this state, we are disconnecting. So we're coming up and down, and we are fluctuating between not being able to manage and shutting down, not being able to manage, shutting down. And so we are disconnecting from our bodies in order to avoid the discomfort of being in this highly activated state. So we check out, we lose sensation with our body because our bodies are so hyperactivated that they're no longer a safe place to be either. So we check out. Trauma can have long-term lasting effects on a person's well-being if the symptoms persist and don't decrease in severity. The trauma can develop into post-traumatic stress disorder. And long exposure to trauma over long periods of time can create what's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So as we had mentioned, trauma could be acute, it could be something chronic, and it can create, or it can be complex. It's a multiple experiences over a long period of time. There's also secondary trauma. So if you're a witness to someone else's trauma, that can also create trauma in your body, being unable to resolve the conflict. So anytime that your nervous system is unable to resolve through one of these pathways, and it holds these little accumulations over time, as I said, raise our baseline and shift our whole body and posture, and the way we operate, the way we move through the world, the way we engage with everyone, the way we engage with ourselves. So we all have a nervous system, right? We all have mental health. We all have a nervous system. Understanding how our nervous system works can help us to understand our own natural responses and learn how to manage them when we're experiencing the stimulus. So if your natural response is to go to worry, and if you get easily frustrated when you're challenged, there's no judgment around it. That's just how your nervous system is organized. And knowing this about yourself can help you, one, to ease the frustration, right? To give yourself a little compassion for yourself, which is always helpful, and then to learn how to work with it. So our bodies, all of these things are just information. The sensations that we're experiencing is just information. It's our body's way of talking to us and letting us know to pump the brakes before we have to shut off. When we learn the language of our own bodies, we can begin to meet these stimulus in a way that can create connection back. No matter where our baseline is, we can all begin to learn within our own bodies how to take these small amounts of charge that we get and discharge them over and over. And when we keep practicing that over and over and over with consistent practice over time, we can begin to lower that baseline so that when we're experiencing stimulus, it's easier to come back to baseline. If you're already down at this level, here it's a little bit more of a challenge, but it can be done. And we know this through neuroplasticity, right? Our brains are always making new pathways, and we can work with these pathways. We can work with our body to reshape the way we engage with our environment. So what that does is it leads to resilience. And resilience is foundational to our body's ability to bounce back from the rise and fall of life events. So resilience is not about pushing through no matter what. That's in our society, in our culture, we tend to glorify like that no pain, no gain mentality. Resilience is about that no pain. It's more like grit or endurance. But resilience is more, it's got more fluidity to it. It is, from a nervous system lens, it's the ability to remain adaptable and flexible in the face of life events. It's defined by our ability to recognize and hold space for whatever our adaptive response looks like. So we talked about how each person has a different baseline and we all respond to stimulus in a different way. So learning the way you respond and being able to meet that response and then bring yourself stay resourced and bring yourself back is resilience. So again, I'll repeat, resilience is defined by our ability to recognize and hold space for whatever our adaptive response looks like, to notice, identify, and then hold the space, meaning witness our responses, to sit with that discomfort and just notice it and stay resourced as we're navigating that moment, to weather it and to hold space and resource with the least amount of negative consequences to our entire being, right? Body, mind, heart, spirit. So because of our culture and we glorify busy and the hustle, right? And going and go. We keep pushing and we don't listen to our bodies. We don't honor what our bodies are telling us. We perceive slowing down as weakness. But when we can honor where we are and just touch on our growing edge with some compassion and some respect for where we are, we can actually go much further than we thought we could. And the vagus nerve can help us get there. So the vagus nerve, I'm sure many of you have heard about this if you're in, healing through your own trauma, or if you're in this field at all. The vagus nerve it plays a major role in regulating and modulating the autonomic nervous system. So it's part of our parasympathetic nervous system. About like 80 to 90% of the fibers of this nerve convey sensory information from our body's major organs to the brain. So what does that mean? That means our larynx, our heart, our lungs, our GI tract, our abdominal viscera, everything, the spleen, the liver. And all of these, the fibers of the motor fibers, they all deliver messages from the brain back to the body. So that 20% goes the brain back to the body. So most of the information is going up to the brain. And they have two different branches. This vagus nerve has two different branches, and it does two different things at the same time. So you may have heard of the term polyvagal theory. And that's why it's called that, because the vagus nerve has two branches that come directly from the brain. And one comes from the front, the ventral, and one comes from the back, dorsal. So back to the parasympathetic nervous system, we have the brake and the emergency brake, right? So the ventral vagus is the brake, and the dorsal vagus is the emergency brake. And the ventral vagus is like, it acts like a conductor. Our vagus nerve, it acts like a conductor, and it recruits all of the fibers of the vagus nerve to be in good balance, right? It's a brake pedal. It keeps us steady. It allows our breathing to stay healthy and steady. And when our ventral vagus is online, we're in safety and connection. So we are in the green when our ventral vagal is online. So when we detect signals that aren't safe, when our amygdala, the smoke alarm of our body, is starting to go off, we lift our foot off the brake and we move to the gas pedal. Danger, I gotta get out of here or fight, right? And we're pushing down on the gas pedal. The heart rate increases, our breathing increases, cortisol and adrenaline's pumping through our bodies. And that will continue until we write one of those two pathways. We either confront or we remove ourselves from the situation. If we do not do any one of those things, the dorsal vagus jumps on and starts conducting the show. What that looks like is the freeze state, and then we shut down and go into conservation physiology, right? So the ventral is our social engagement, the ventral vagus, the green. It's picking up our facial expressions from other people. It picks up facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, cadence of voice. So right now, your body is informing you of my own nervous system because of the way I'm speaking, because of the way my eyes look. If I open my eyes or close my eyes, your body is informing you whether you're safe or not, depending on how I'm, based on what I'm doing, because this is where your focus is right now, because we're in this place and time right now. So all of these little shifts are informing you whether you're safe or not. So safety is very much a visceral state. Safety is not something that we can think ourselves into. We can't fake being in a safe state. Safety is being informed by our entire physiology, our entire biology, by what we're seeing and interacting with in our environment. With that said, so how can we bring ourselves, so we can use these states then to bring our body back online. Rather than trying to think our way out of what's happening, we could start to notice and just pay attention to simple things that are going on in our bodies all the time, like our heart rate and the pace of our breath. So let me back up a little bit and go back to the vagus nerve just a little bit, because we were talking about our baseline, right? And how we can shift our baseline. So sometimes when we're born, not sometimes when we're born, we're all here. When we're born, we don't have all of these circuits developed. So the ventral, the sympathetic, and the dorsal vagal, these two, the parasympathetic, the sympathetic. We don't have all of them online. We have a fully functional dorsal as infants. Our bodies, we don't have the muscle strength to mobilize, to get us out, to fight or to run. We can just freeze as infants. So the rest of this is developed. It begins developing in the third trimester, and then it mostly develops between 3 to 5 years of life, but it's always continuing to develop our vagus nerve. It's always continuing throughout adulthood or throughout adolescence and into adulthood. And so by working with the fibers of the vagus nerve, we can begin to shift our body into remembering how to come back to safety. So with that said, I was thinking we could do a little exercise in listening to our body's responses. So just take a moment wherever you are right now to just feel physically into your seat, whether you're sitting, whether you're lying down, wherever you're making contact with the ground below you. Just bring your awareness to that space between your body and whatever you're sitting on. And if it feels good to you, tune into your heart. If that's not accessible to you, maybe you could tune into your breath. And just notice the pace of your breath. We're not trying to change anything. We're not creating a story around it. We're just meeting ourselves where we are right now. If you're breathing a little more shallowly, as I am, if your heart is beating rapidly, as mine is, we're just noticing. It's just information. Right? So we have an idea of how we're feeling in the moment. Now, I'd like you to go ahead and just with your normal breath, just do a little bit longer exhale. Just try that like 3 more times. When it feels good, you may need to take a few regular breaths in between and then do a longer exhale. Let's do that one more time. For some of us, that's really all we need, this longer exhale, to sort of bring our body back to a state of being aware of where we are and really present in our bodies. So when we're breathing, we don't breathe for the future. We don't breathe for the past. Breath is happening here and now. And it's always with us, right? So it's a really easy, portable way to bring ourselves back to center, is connecting with our breath. It's something we have to do, and it's always available. And connecting into our breath, so we talked about that vagus nerve that runs from our brain all the way down through our diaphragm, where we're breathing, and into our abdominal viscera. And every breath is informing that vagus nerve of what's happening. Everything we're looking at, everything we're feeling on our skin, everything we're hearing with our ears is informing this vagus nerve of how we should be in this moment. So when I'm experiencing a traumatic, a trigger, and I mean that in the very real sense of the word. I know a lot of people throw that word around carelessly, and I used to be one of those people. But when we're experiencing a real trigger, we can't rationalize with ourselves. We can't think our way out of it. And what I have found for my own self is to go right to my breath. And there's lots and lots, there's tons of books out there on breath work. But when we're in that state, coming up with like an actual structure is not accessible most times, speaking from my own experience. So the first thing I do is just start to lengthen my breath. So what that does is each time we take a breath, we have these cycles of breath, right? Breath comes in and breath comes out. Breath comes in, there's similar pause, and breath comes out and there's sort of a pause. Each time we take an in breath, it is telling our body to speed up our heart just a little bit. And each time we breathe out, it's telling our body to lower our heart rate just a little bit. So if we can keep lengthening our breath when we're experiencing that hypervigilant state, palms are sweaty, heart is racing, throat is closed, right? Our skin is tingling, everything, our spidey senses are up, I call it. Our spidey senses are tingling and we're looking for where's the danger. To notice that we stop breathing. You notice that when you're experiencing something like that, we tend to stop breathing or make our breath shallow. And that is also a signal to our vagus nerve to that danger is coming. So the easiest way, and it's not always easy, it actually takes a lot of practice to be able to connect into the breath. If you experienced, if any of you were here and saw Dr. Jen's talk, I believe it was a couple months ago, she talked about how we can rewire our pathways through mindfulness. So mindfulness is part of a yoga practice where we are being present in the moment on purpose, right? We're being fully present to what we're doing on purpose. What better way to be present and than with our own breath? Because as I mentioned before, it's no matter where you are, it's available. You're always breathing. And it's a simple way to start to downregulate, start to bring yourself from here to here. So some other ways that I have found helpful for my own self, besides being able to connect into the breath and use a mantra, like telling myself, I'm here and now, or be here now, or I'm safe in this moment, whatever that may be. If you're focusing on your breath, you're not focusing on what happened before, you're not focusing on what happened after, you're just focused on getting air in and getting air out. And I say longer on the exhales. Don't worry about anything too fancy, just really long on the exhales. Another thing that we can do to bring ourselves back into our body is bilateral stimulation. So if anyone has ever had EMDR therapy, it's the similar, so they use this bilateral, it's either a light that goes across, right, that we follow with our eyes, or it's a buzzing in one of our hands that goes back and forth, or sometimes they'll use a tone on either ear. And what we're doing is we're creating these pathways that we're connecting these pathways that have been sort of disrupted by the trauma. And we can do that. We don't need any fancy machines for that either. We can do that just with our own body. So a lot of times I will actually rock back and forth. I invite you to try this actually. This is like a little magic trick that I like to practice with clients and with my my kids even. So wherever you are in your body, in your place and time, if you just begin rocking, just swaying gently back and forth, and stick with it. I know it may feel silly. You might be like, what's happening? But at some point, this swaying back and forth will begin to, it's almost like I refer to it as like it's lulling your amygdala back to sleep, like you're rocking it back, letting it know to just settle down, go back to sleep, and everything's fine. So at some point when you're rocking back and forth, you will take a nice deep breath. It happens every time when I'm practicing breath work in groups or one-on-one individually. Just this swaying will eventually invite a nice long breath. It's our body's response, like, okay, I can relax now. Everything's fine. And if you think about it, it's sort of instinctual, right? What do mothers do with their babies? You rock them. If you prefer it more gentle, that's a great thing to do, this. But say you're in a really activated state and you can feel the energy just running down your hands and legs, like it's very like electric. You can still do the swaying or the bilateral movements, but I would just make it bigger. I would stand up and sway back and forth in this kind of way, and allowing your body, your arms to move in whatever way they need. And sometimes, I'm just again speaking from my own experience, sometimes that movement is too much. Even that feels unsafe, because that's what trauma does, right? It makes us feel unsafe in our own bodies. So sometimes big movements like that are too much, but you may need that. It depends on what you need. So I would suggest starting with the gentle swing. That always helps me. I find that little kids often need the bigger movements, the big body rocking, back and forth, swaying in this way, tapping. Anything you're hitting both, or here I can show you. So I'm hitting both my knees, or I'm going back and forth. Bringing your knee up. So if you're standing, you could bring your knee up and hit your knee and do it that way. I find that the kids really like moving the bigger movements. And for myself, I prefer gentle swaying. So breath work, bilateral stimulation. What are some other ways to work within our body systems, within our body sensations? Sometimes just putting yourself like in a smaller contained place if you're feeling unsafe, right? Moving yourself to a place. Sometimes I'll put like a little weighted blanket over me, or go in a doorway and push against the doorway and breathe and exhale for a long period of time. I find helpful. And my yoga practice. So spending time, so when I'll start to share personal. So about 2 years ago, I had a crisis of mental health, and I wasn't quite sure. I wasn't quite sure what was happening to me. I had no words. I was in a place where I was a danger to myself and needed some help and couldn't understand how I had gotten to that point, especially considering that I've been doing this work for 15 years. So what I found, I got myself a trauma therapist, Dr. Cecilia Baldwin of New Narratives Therapy, and she was fabulous. And she was the first therapist I ever went to who was able to identify exactly what was happening and help me move out of it. So what she was able to identify was through my life, in my childhood, I was in such a chaotic, violent sort of upbringing that, and it was normalized. So I had all these stresses, right, that accumulated, all of these times where I was unable to run as a child. You're unable to run and you're unable to fight. So you go into like a fawning state, and it becomes, you change your whole identity, right, to just be safe in the environment you're in. And I had operated that way for most of my life, not realizing what was happening until things started shifting for me. And the bonds that I had created with my family, I had recognized as what was happening. And but I couldn't cognitively know. My body was going through it. My whole body was telling me, you're in danger, you're in danger. This is unsafe. Get out, get out, get out. But I couldn't figure out why. And so, being that I'm a body worker, even though I was seeing a trauma therapist, I began working with my body and understanding these states, because they would, as anybody who's experienced PTSD or complex PTSD, they come out of nowhere, right? So we have these things that happen to us, but we have no clear memory of what they are. Our mind, we can't go into our little filing cabinet in our brain and pull it out, but the body remembers, the amygdala remembers. And it may see something or smell something or hear something that informs your body. This has happened before, and you better be prepared to either fight or fight or run, fight or run. And that's what I mean by when I say we can't. Sometimes when we're experiencing these traumas, we can't think our way out of them because we can't even recall what it is that happened. We just know that our body's experiencing whatever is going on in the room. It could be anything as danger. So for me, in addition to working with my therapist to help me understand and put some language around what was happening, and to work through relationships, I had to learn to operate because my triggers were because I was unraveling childhood trauma that I had suppressed. So my own children had become my triggers. Their falls, screams, noises, just things that kids just normally do. I have 4 children. There's a lot of people in this house. There's a lot of noise all the time. And so in order to exist in my family, I had to learn to really connect into my body sensations, or I was just going to be in a hypervigilant state constantly. And then that's affecting everyone around me. Because what we do know about, right, because what we learned about our nervous system is our biology is taking in everyone else's biology in the room. All of these little nuances, the way I blink my eyes, the way my lip curls, all of you are registering what I'm doing and making discerning choices, whether you're safe or not, whether I'm a safe person to be around or not. And it's affecting you. For example, if I start talking to you like this and my face is sort of flat and my arms are crossed, and what just happened in your body? I'm showing you, I bet your heart rate went up. Your breath started to get a little more shallow. You may not have even noticed it, but maybe your spidey senses went up. Like, ooh, something shifted there. What's happening? But if I am calm and centered and in my own body, And then that informs you that you're safe as well. I think of this like, if anybody has cats, like I've learned how to talk to cats, right? Cats are very, one of my trauma teachers was she's a very big like animal lover, and she has lots of cats. And she informed me, like, when you watch a cat, they are constantly doing that, right? They're constantly pulling in their environment. We're the same way. We're animals. We like to call ourselves human, but we're animals too. Just like a cat, just like a dog, just like anything else. We're pulling in information from our environment. So, for example, I have learned that with my cat, if I want to put them at ease, I will slow my breath and even give them a slow blink, right? A slow blink lets them know that I'm safe to be around. And so we're doing that with each other all the time. And in my own family, in order for, because I'm not existing by myself in a single place. And so just like with anything else, my energy, my physiology is affecting everyone else in the room, everyone else I'm living with. And when you already have people who have CPTSD, and you're coming into their space and you're hyperactivated, believe me when I say it can be explosive. So it was really important for me to create a routine for myself. So knowing that my triggers were my kids and the noises and the sounds, they, as most kids do, they wake up like full of energy and making so much noise. So my routine is to get up before them. So I'm usually up at 5 o'clock in the morning, working on my own mental health, resource myself for the day. And what does that look like? That looks like me just taking the time to be in my space on my first floor without any sound, which to me is like luxurious. It looks like me sitting down on my mat. And even if I'm not going to do a full asana practice, which is the movement part of yoga, I will sit and I will do some breath work and meditation. And that typically is enough to get me through the day. There are some days where I need extra help and continuing to do that. And what that may look like is me taking off my shoes and socks. Well, I usually don't wear shoes and socks in my house, maybe slippers, but taking things off my feet, going down to my bare feet and stepping outside and standing on the earth and tuning into what's around me, right? Because if my house is what's all of the noise and all of the chaos and all of the energy, the frenetic energy in the house, I can't change that. And if I can't change my own body sensations to it, right, by monitoring where I'm at, and if I'm here with it, and I can't bring myself down here with just my breath, then what do we know? We know that my environment is informing my biology, so I need to remove myself and go put myself in some other sort of environment. So stepping out onto the earth, going and touching a tree, laying down in the grass, staring at the clouds, and just listening to the birds, and starting with the senses, so listening, the feel of the skin, the breath coming in, the warmth of the sun, or maybe it's the cold. For a while there in December, I started a barefoot practice where I'd walk outside, bare feet into the snow. It was like up leveling my breathwork practice, because what that does, this cold therapy, what it does is it engages your vagus nerve, and it forces you to start slowing your breath in order to begin bringing in breath. It kind of, it's a little bit of a shock to the system, and the cold causes your whole body to slow down and causes you to slow down your breath. So now that we're moving into spring and summer, that will no longer be an option for me. But I can always hold ice cubes, or just put ice cubes on my feet, or cold water. You know, we splash cold water on our face, something to sort of shift our engagement with what's happening. Yes, and then, so I'm thinking that's throughout the day. And then in the evenings, if I need to, I usually don't have problems falling asleep. Staying asleep was an issue, but there are things you can do to help you fall asleep. For example, yoga nidra is a really, really wonderful practice, and they use it. They have a whole program that they've worked, done research with veterans and yoga nidra and helping them with insomnia and PTSD. So you can, they have tons of practices for that on YouTube. So if you are one of those people who have problems, mine is I wake up hypervigilant. I need to work myself down to a baseline. Some people are, and by the time it's evening, I'm fine. Some people are having, they're hypervigilant in the evening. So I would recommend yoga nidra for that, to help you sleep. And again, these are practices, right? There's no magic pill. We can't, it's a process with our biology, right? We can't just ingest something and fix things. It's a practice. So I get up and I start my practice before I'm hyperactivated, because it's not, we wouldn't practice like drills when we're in the middle of a tournament playing a game, right? We wouldn't practice our instrument when we're in the middle of our concert. We practice so that we can perform during the concert. So these sorts of body sensations that we can work on are much, much more helpful, and they can become second nature the more we work at them. I hope you found that helpful. And I'm open to taking any questions. How does that work, Nick?
Sure. So the chat box is open. So anybody who has a question, you can type it in the chat, which is how I found it works best. And we already have some questions, actually. So if you're open to, are you open to answering some?
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. So I know, doing presentations like this and everything, it's nerve-wracking. So, but I want you to know, I got so sleepy and relaxed during this that I was like, oh no, I have to wake up and do something so that we can take questions.
I hear that a lot. My voice tends to do that. When I do guided meditations, it's easy for me to put someone right to sleep.
Well, and I love ASMR I watch it on YouTube and everything. It's really hard for me to relax. It really is. I have, a history of trauma, probably not much unlike yours. And it's hard for me to relax. And I think, when I do, it means sleep for me. And I don't know what it means to relax. I know what it means to relax enough to sleep, but it's hard for me to just relax. So, I'm also learning about a state of relaxation without being asleep. So I'm practicing that right now. So we have a question from Rose, who asks, what do you suggest for those of us who can't use cold type skills? I have Raynaud's disease, and any type of cold causes an attack of vasospasm and hyperventilation. I understand the value of interrupting the nervous response, but is there anything else equivalent to cold exposure that interrupts that as well?
That's a great question. Yeah, for that quick interruption, because you have Raynaud's, I don't know that it is a good idea for anything quick because of the vasospasm. So you want to be really gentle with your nervous system. Sound could be a great way. So humming. That was something I forgot to mention. So the vagus nerve runs through our body, and it runs most closest to the surface of our skin, or to the surface, to the outside of our body. So most superficial to our body, in our mouth. And so humming can stimulate the vagus nerve to relax. So there's actually a pranayama practice in yoga called Brahmahari. It's E breath, where you put your fingers in your ears and you hum. You take, and then you just and like a buzzing bee. And that humming can help stimulate the parasympathetic. It pulls the parachute, and it slows us down.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
So that could be a good practice to disrupt, because you're taking your focus away from what's happening. You're bringing yourself in the now and present, and you're making a sound. So you're creating a vibration within your body. And a lot of time putting your ears, your hands to your ears, you're blocking out everything else going around. And you're just humming. You're welcome, Rose.
This is
Sharon, helpful. It is Nidra, Nidra, Yoga Nidra.
Nidra. Awesome.
Yes. I'll write it in the chat.
You're doing a lot of work. You're our guest. Here, I'll help you. I'll help you too. Okay, so next question is from Janine. Can you talk more about caring for others, children, family, while taking care of yourself? What has been the impact of changing your own self on your dynamic with them?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I talked a little bit about that in how it is imperative. I have to. This is just me. I'm not saying this is for everyone. I personally have to get up before them and resource myself. And I notice a big difference in my day if I do not do that. So that's step one, like prioritizing yourself, which I know, right? Parents don't want to hear that. We don't do that well. We don't prioritize ourselves. But it's absolutely important, right? It's the same thing as like putting on the oxygen mask before you help the person next to you. You have to, if you're running on empty, then you're not then we're here, right? We're starting our day here. And so any little external stimulus we're going to perceive as a threat. We're in this hypervigilant state. So it's important for me to start my day at my lowest baseline that I absolutely can. And then I am fortunate to have some older kids. So my kids are 21, 14, 7, and 4. So I have, like, my oldest can sometimes help. Hey, can you take the 4-year-old? She's a little much. Go take her for a walk. Or so support, connection, having a friend to call, super important too on those days where it's a struggle to find baseline. And when I was in the place where I was really hyperactivated all the time, my PTSD was on, and I was waking up in a sweat and waking up terrified. It became important. That's where I realized I had to create this thing for myself. So I guess it would depend on what are your specific needs, right? Like, I knew that I needed, because I give, and because of my work, so I'm raising 4 children, I am a body worker, and I'm giving to my clients, that it's important that I give to myself too, or I get resentful. And then I'm operating, I'm operating up here instead of down here. So I used a lot of support. This was back when I first, so back in September of 2019, I had a whole day set up called Therapy Thursday. It was my favorite day of the week. I saw my trauma therapist at 1. So I would be around, and I didn't see any clients. I rearranged my schedule. I had the privilege and luxury of being self-employed and being able to rearrange my schedule so that I had this one therapy day. I would see my trauma therapist at 1. I would come home and have my oldest like manage the 2 when they were, or the little one and the other one when she would come home from school. So I would have my oldest watch the other 2 and actually create time to process out from my therapist, because I was going through a lot. And so I would create time to cry, because crying actually is one of the, so our body, we can do all these things to reduce the cortisol levels in our body, right? This breath work, this yoga, we can do all of these things, but our body only eliminates cortisol in 3 different ways: tears, sweat, and urine. So crying is a great way to get rid of the excess cortisol in your body, right? And so I would schedule, well, after I come home from therapy, I either would see a friend who was a body worker and get body work done, or come home and cry, or both. And then I had, in the evening, I went to a group called Sing Out Stress. It's run by, and it's still happening, it's still going on, run by a music therapist named Bronwyn Bird, and she and her family own the Birdhouse Center for the Arts in Lambertville. And they run an online Sing Out Stress program. And that's every Thursday evening. So that would be my therapy Thursday. And then I would come home after that and I would have a piece of cheesecake. To reward myself for like all I went through processing that whole day.
I love that.
With the kids, it's more so how I talk to my kids about what's happening so that they can understand, when I'm responding in these ways, is I explain to them that I have a boo-boo on my brain. So I refer to the PTSD, the CPTSD, as a boo-boo on the brain, right?
Oh.
And if you think about it, physical illness, right? So say you are on your bike and you fall off and you break your arm. So you've had like something happen. Are you just going to like start doing push-ups the next day or even a week later? No, we're going to take it real gentle until that heals. And even after that cast comes off, we may move a little more gingerly. So I refer to it as like a bruise. So it's a way for her to understand, like kids understand bruises, they get them all the time. You understand the bruise is there and it's fine. But if you put too much pressure on the bruise, it can hurt. And depending on how much pressure you put on the bruise, it could hurt a whole lot, or it could just be hurt a little bit. So they now know in the house we talk about mental health, like we talk about the weather. And I may use phrases like too much at once, too many noises happening, and they understand. Or I'll say, ooh, the bruise, and they sort of understand. And I've worked with them. They see me working on my breath work. They see me getting up and doing what I need to do, and they want to do it too. Kids are curious. They, my 7-year-old wants to get on. I do Monday through Friday. I have a private Facebook group where I go on live and I do some breath work at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I do my practice and then I show up and I invite people in and help some clients who are going through something similar. And I just opened it up to whoever wants to join. And my 7-year-old wants to join in. Mom, can I do online with you? I want to do a live video where she wants to do the breath work. It just becomes a part of, I'm normalizing what's happening and it's just a part of our family life.
That's awesome. That is. All right. So we have a question from Karen. What are some coping skills for chronic pain?
You may not like this answer. It seems so simple, but breath. So breath, and I say this from experience. As I mentioned, I had 4 kids and 3 of them I had without pain medication. So the one was an emergency C-section. The other 3 I had and delivered without pain medication. How I did that was through breath and a practice that is referred to in the birthing world as hypnobirthing, but really what hypnobirthing is it's breath work, it's mindfulness, breath work, and creative visualization. So you're putting yourself, because our body, our minds, right? Our bodies are informing us of our physiology, but our minds are also capable when we can access our imagination, because trauma kind of disconnects us from our imagination and our creativity. But when we can access that, and we can kind of transport ourselves places, right? So to deliver my children, what I did was I set up across from me, I set up a picture of a place where I really loved, something that reminded me of something joyful, right? So that when I looked at it, it was a visual oasis, sort of. It's the biology in the room. This picture of a beach is informing my body of being there, and I'm breathing with it and really imagining myself there. And because what that happens is when we can connect into our breath and slow our breath and work with our breath and work with like imagining ourselves in a place where we really feel safe and comfortable, our bodies think we're already there. Like, for example, imagine that you are walking into a room and on a table in front of you is a bowl of fruit. And you go over to this big giant bowl of fruit and you pick up your favorite fruit and you're feeling it and you smell it. You really smell what that fruit tastes like. Feel it in your hands. Maybe you take a taste. How many of you, when I said take a taste, started salivating? Right? We're not really there. We're not holding a fruit. But just imagining it causes our body to respond as if it is. And so when we're imagining some place that we feel safe and connected, our body will respond in that way. When we can slow our breath, right, and really focus on just our breath, we're not focusing on what's going on yesterday or tomorrow. We're focusing on just our breath. The other thing that happens, right, is when we're shallow breathing, the oxygen is not getting to all of our body, right? We're just taking these shallow breaths. And so when our muscles aren't getting enough oxygen, what do? They start to constrict. But if we're really focusing on bringing in that breath and doing the deep belly breathing, not the chest breathing, but coming down into our belly, even if you put your hands there on your belly and really feel when you inhale, your belly should come out. And when you exhale, your belly should come in. And I know for most of us, and I don't want to stereotype, but mainly women, right? We're taught like, suck your belly in, suck your belly in. Don't suck your belly in when you're breathing. Your belly wants to be free. Let it be free.
Free the belly.
Yes.
Yeah, some of us guys were taught to do the same thing. So yeah, it's
So you feel us, right?
Yep. I remember learning belly breathing and treatment and everything. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, but it is true. Everything hurts more when you're all tensed up. Everything hurts more, you know? Mm-hmm. So you're right. Okay. So James wants to know if there's anything to be done about migraines. And he also asked, what if I lose focus? I guess with...
Yeah. With the mindfulness in the breath?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's, that will happen. It happens to me even. You know, you lose focus. The most important thing that I can share. So when we lose focus, to just keep coming back without judgment. Because sometimes even now, like if I'm trying to practice mindfulness and a thought comes in like, oh, you didn't do that presentation for that NAMI talk. Then I'll see that thought in a balloon or in a, like blow a bubble, blow that thought into a bubble and just let it fly away.
That's helpful.
And it takes a practice. It takes a lot of practice. As for the migraines, I'm looking, I suffer from chronic pain and bipolar. Forget. The Curable app. No, I have not heard of that. As far as the migraines, are the migraines in conjunction with you losing focus, or are you saying that the migraines cause you to lose focus, James? Because I don't know, the migraines cause you to lose focus. Yeah, absolutely. That's understandable. I've had migraines before. It's really hard to focus on anything but what's happening in your head. So what I do with my clients and myself, and this is a trick I learned from a chiropractor of mine, if there's something you want to bring your awareness, so say it's the head, right? Your head is throbbing, and this doesn't always help. It's not going to cure it, but it's a way to cope and manage. You bring your attention to the farthest place away. So bringing your attention to your feet, even if it's that, like, it doesn't have to be standing. You don't have to get up and move. You could be laying in whatever comfortable position it is for you. I understand you have a migraine. You want to put the covers over your head. You want to curl up, whatever is comfortable, but you can just start. And this is actually part of Yoga Nidra. This is a little simple. So you could start with, like, I feel my right pinky toe. I relax my right pinky toe. I feel the next toe. I relax that toe. I feel the next toe. Relax that toe. Just bring all your attention away from the migraine. Now, that sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. Like, that's the migraines are tricky in that way. And I know I've experienced somewhere the best thing you could do is just minimize all stimulus and sleep.
Yeah. Laura's question, I think, was you were reading that too, about the Curable app, guided practices and lessen pain. That's something definitely to look into. She has chronic pain and bipolar disorder. When I'm depressed, anxious, my pain levels increase, but I can forget the things I need to practice. And I'm wondering if a guided app may help, or if you have any others that you use or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't use an app, but as you had mentioned, Laura, when you forget the things you need to practice, like, that is why for me, because it's so easy for me, if I don't create a routine to just let the day pull me along like in an undertow. So I had to create a routine and structure. So here's something. So if you're forgetting you need to practice, there are things that we do every single day, right? We get up and we brush our teeth every day. So you can practice mindfulness while you're brushing your teeth. And all that looks like is just paying attention to what you're doing in the moment and nothing else. So I'm brushing my, up and down, just that mindfulness, just that little bit of practice, because sometimes those of us who are so busy, it's hard for us to actually sit down and create like a structured practice. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to sit down my mat and take out a pillow and take out this thing. It could be I'm washing the dishes and just practicing my breath and paying attention to what my hands are doing. I'm brushing my teeth and I'm practicing breathing into my belly and not choking on the toothpaste, right? As I'm breathing. So what I suggest is if you forget, maybe weave it into things you already do. Is that helpful?
It does. It makes sense. It's, I think a lot of, I run NAMI, and a lot of people think that it's, such a great thing that, I'm so busy all the time. And I don't always think it's the best thing to be so busy all the time, because, if you don't incorporate that little bit of mindfulness, like you were saying, you I mean, I do things and don't even notice, like there's so much work to do that sometimes I don't always, notice things about myself even, it's, that little bit of mindfulness just to notice where I am and what I'm doing, I think I haven't also relaxed in a long time. So tonight you bringing this was very helpful in and of itself, so relaxation, we need to relax. We can't operate like that all the time. That, heightened.
Yeah. That's like the equivalent, right? Of like, we can't run a marathon 24/7. We need to give our physical body a rest. Well, that includes our nervous system as part of our physical body, and all of the stimulus coming in. We have to have time of just decompressing.
Yeah. And I don't know if anyone else in the room is like me, but I save things that are good or pleasurable until I reach a certain point. So I keep doing that thing where, when this pandemic is over, then I will take a break. And in the meantime, I find myself, okay, how much longer can we keep this pace? Okay, the end of the pandemic needs to come so that we can all calm down and relax and take a break and everything. But what this has kind of told me tonight and us doing this is that maybe it's not the best idea to wait and save it until, the end of whatever, or when you reach a certain goal, but that it helps to keep us going to do this and be mindful and practice this, and right?
Yeah, I refer to it as like sourcing your well. So we have these like wells within us, and we can't just keep pulling things out. We have to put some stuff in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think if anybody has any more questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll answer them. But if not, thank you for relaxing all of us and helping us through this. One more question from James: is radical acceptance mindful?
I would say radical acceptance is an element of mindfulness, in that to practice mindfulness, we're not judging ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not judging what's happening. So that would be a component of mindfulness. I know that there are books out there like Radical Acceptance and Radical, I'm forgetting the other one. I'm not sure if you're talking about that as like a movement, or if you're just talking about just fully accepting yourself as you show up in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think there's a way of practicing radical acceptance, and in doing it, it's mindful. There's, I think it depends on how you do it, James. It's, there are times that I am really hard on myself. Actually, not times. Like when you said earlier, sometimes when we're born, that made my whole day. That made my whole day. But yeah, so I beat myself up constantly. So a form of mindfulness for me can be, radically accepting some of the things that are going on, and trying to see myself for who I am and what I do, and not what, the stories that I tell myself, and to try and radically accept, things and situations and people and myself for the way that I am, so there's a way to do that, I find myself being mindful when I do that. Sure. Yeah.
I also find myself kind of talking to my little self,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's the voice we're hearing, like, oh, is this going to be okay? Yes, it will be okay. I know it's you in there, 12-year-old Christine. It'll be fine.
That's so nurturing, and I do that too. I find myself doing that. And James, you have a DBT book? Awesome.
Oh, I meant to share, speaking of books, thank you, James. A couple of books I use. So this one's called How to Breathe. I don't know if you can see it, the light. This is all breathwork practices. This is a good one too.
Polyvagal exercises for safety and connection.
Yes, Polyvagal Exercises for Safety and Connection by Deb Dana. If you're a practitioner and into the 5-element theory of traditional Chinese medicine.
The Tao of Trauma.
The Tao of Trauma by Elaine Duncan. Jennifer Patterson's The Power of Breathwork. And then everyone's favorite.
Oh, The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score.
That comes up in so many NAMI groups. The Body Keeps the Score. I mean, it is about, it's not about what's wrong with us. It's about what happened to us, you know? It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Or on that note,
it didn't start with you. There was a NAMI man photo that I took holding up a sign that said, trauma and addiction ran in my family until it ran into me. So nope, none of it started with us.
Yes.
And I think Jennifer has a question too. Jennifer, you can, if you want to unmute and ask a question, you can totally do that. That's fine. I can ask you to unmute if that helps. Or you can type in the chat, whichever. Or you may have raised your hand and not meant to ask a question, and I'm picking on you. In which case, don't worry about it.
Or maybe I answered the question already. Oh,
could be. Yeah.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, everybody who's thanking. You know, these events mean a lot to us, and you know, people like you, Christine, mean a lot to us, and that you come out and do this, it means a great deal. It really does. It's hard for me to talk when I'm sleepy.
Good. You can just end this and go right to bed.
I am still at the office, so I have.
Oh, that's right.
I have a 45-minute drive home.
Yeah, then we need to wake you up.
I don't want to wake back up though. That was so helpful. It's so hard for me to relax, and I know I'm not alone in this room. You know, I know it's, if we've, you know, survived trauma, it's hard to relax when it's hard for you to feel safe. And one of my favorite things that you said was, you can't fake being safe or looking safe or seeming safe or anything like that. It's very true. So you're a special person that makes people feel safe. So that in and of itself is a gift. So
thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you, Christine, for being here, and thank all of you for joining us this evening. I will tomorrow, after I go home and relax, edit the video and post it so that you have it to reference when you need it, and reach out if you need anything. And if you would like to connect with Christine beyond this session, a link to her website is on our website. So, and what is your website, Christine, just for everybody?
It's currently under construction because because of the pandemic, my work has sort of shifted, but it's just my name, ChristineDiPilla.com.
Awesome. So reach out and connect with Christine as well. And again, thank you all for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Nick, again.
Absolutely. Thank you.